everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Privacy Matters. Once again, I'm your host, Nick, joined by my co-host here, Steve. And we're here to talk about all things that regarding privacy, social media, data browsers, cookies, you name it. So I think today we want to kick off a conversation about browser safety and some of the nuances and differences between different browsers. I know that my co-host, Steve, here is very well versed in DuckDuckGo, which gained a lot of attention as a secure and private way to search the web and removed a lot of tracking and cookies and things like that. So I'm going to pass it over to Steve and let him kick things off regarding data privacy and in browser searching.
Yeah. Hey, Nick, great to be with you again today, and looking forward to the discussion here on some of the web browser options that exist out there and why some are more desirable than others. You hit the nail on the head. I think the most popular one that people are gravitating to is DuckDuckGo. And when you look at the macro picture that exists out there, it's not because it has some unbelievable functionality that is so much greater than the other browsers that may exist, like Safari, Internet Explorer, Firefox. The reason DuckDuckGo is getting so much attention is exactly why we're here today, and that's because of the data privacy and data security that it offers, and that it frankly, emphasizes and celebrates about itself. In some ways, DuckDuckGo is gaining, this group of individuals, this population that are using their web browser. And they are providing this level of data security. And what they are trading off is this high level of revenue that they could be bringing in, right? They could be selling that information on the individuals using the browser, on how they're using the browser, on what they're searching against. And to this point, they've sacrificed a lot of that potential revenue in order to give an alternative in the market. So
that brings up a good question. Like, how are they making money? Like, what are they doing to generate revenue?
Yeah, it's not. They have around over 100 million searches a day on their browser, right? That's what their estimates are at this point in time. And I think there's a combination of general advertisement that takes place on the browser. And what I mean by that is it is not targeted behind the scenes based on your profile and how you're searching. It is general advertisement. So I'll give an example. I was using DuckDuckGo the other day, and something popped up for Target. So Target is just hoping that the people on there are fitting the category that they want to make an advertisement, but they're doing it in a way that isn't analyzing.
It's following that traditional advertising model where you have a virtual billboard, basically. It's not tied to your activity or your search history or your cookies or, wherever you went on the web yesterday. It's just, hey, we want to occupy some space on a virtual display and throw a banner ad up or whatever.
Yeah. And I think their technology is, probably another way that is not publicized, but I have to assume it's working in the background, is some of their data privacy and data security algorithms and methodologies, I have to imagine, are being leveraged in some capacity by companies out there. So it's not clear cut what all their revenue streams are, but like I said, I'm a follower. I'm a user of this. I'll always look for alternatives on the market to protect my data privacy and data security.
So another thing that I know was really important when it comes to, kind of how people look at browsers and why a lot of people moved to DuckDuckGo to begin with, was that they were also kind of viewed as the free speech, browser. So if you know about, any of the other Firefox, Google, what have you, like any of the other browsers, the algorithms not only are tracking what we're doing and feeding us the content that they think we want to see first, but there's some politics involved, right, at all these companies. And the way that things are ranked and displayed in a search varies depending on what company's browser you're searching, not just your keywords, right? So like you type in your keywords on this browser and it's going to look completely different when you type it into a DuckDuckGo or a Brave browser, which is another one we can talk about later, or, Firefox or what have you. So, and all of that's manipulated data to some extent, right? And I know that DuckDuckGo initially got a major kick because they were kind of seen as this free speech browser system where they're not going to take your keywords and then when you run your search, manipulate whatever results you're going to get. It's like basically like they have their data, you put in your keywords and it's data in, data out. Like there's zero manipulation along the way. So is there anything regarding that you think, I feel like that's gaining more importance and more awareness as we move forward. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's pretty refreshing. I think that's probably my first thought. That's a refreshing way to be on the internet and navigate through information there. I mean, we're seeing this start to come out more and more, how certain topics or information is transmitted to us. Just this week, I know there's been some articles that have come out on Twitter and how they suppress certain information or emphasized other information. So when you take that into, and that's something we'll talk about in a future podcast, but when you think about DuckDuckGo and the fact that this information that you would get would be free of that type of influence, I do think it's refreshing. I think one of the other things too is that most of us get on these social media platforms and recognize that our data is probably being manipulated in some capacity. Even the person that doesn't care knows that it's happening. But I think when you get into web browsers, there's a different perspective on that. I don't think there's a large understanding, and maybe I'm wrong, but I just do not think there's this large understanding from the populace that, when I go on Google, somehow that information is being manipulated in a way, or that I go on Firefox and I'm getting this or that a different way.
Right. Yeah. One of the things we talked about, on the previous podcast was how they use the data about your persona to manipulate and steer your votes, your views, your purchase decisions, and all of that. And it happens in browsers too, right? Like, and to your point, people don't think about that. They think very simply, I'm going to search in, type in some keywords, I'm going to get some results, and I'm going to find the thing I need, whether it be information or product or what have you. But all of that is also working in the background to feed you, essentially the information from the highest bidder, right? So to speak. So like everyone knows about Google AdWords, or a lot of people know about Google AdWords, at least in the marketing industry, and, and how you can essentially pay to have top spots on certain web browsers, right? Like that's fairly common. But I don't think it's something that, to your point, we think about all that extensively. Like we've seen and we know the dangers of social media, and that's like something that's, talked about readily. But when we talk about browsers, it's just something that isn't really, top of mind for most people, I would say.
Yeah. So I was at lunch yesterday. I'm laughing about this because I actually had a small conversation on this. And a friend of mine went to the Spy Museum in Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago, and they were looking at all this stuff. And it was, things from the 70s and 80s that they just couldn't believe. It was mind blowing. And the comment I made is, if that's what they're showing you from the 70s and 80s, what do you think they have today? And correlate that to the discussion that we're having today, which is, if this is what we know about how that data is being manipulated, or that information is being provided to us through this massive algorithm behind the scenes, if these are the things that we know, what's happening that we don't even know about yet, right? Kind of one of those, these big companies, the bottom line is making money. And so they're going to ask for forgiveness before permission. And I'm not getting into somebody doing anything illegal here, as much as pushing the boundaries as much as they can on making every dollar possible through their technical mediums. And by that, I mean these web browsers, right? So these people, these groups, organizations all stand to make a lot of money. These are the things we know. And I always struggle with the fact of, well, what's happening already that we don't know about, right? And I don't have an answer to that today. But,
Well, Yeah, one of the things that's coming out recently is like this awareness of what, like most people know what a cookie is, right? Like a cookie that tracks you. It's a small piece of data, right? That when you go to visit a website, stays on your computer, and then it'll either kind of like helps the the site reload or stores a bit of information so that you know, like when you go back to the site where you left off and things like that, right? So they're super useful. They're very helpful, right? I mean, when I go to the websites, I don't want to have to reload or renavigate to everything necessarily. So it like takes me right back to where I left off. So that's a cookie. But all that data from the cookies then gets manipulated, sold, and sent off to other individuals to let them know what you're doing, exactly like where you're visiting and what you're doing on the web. And now they have these new super cookies. So the super cookies are a little bit more difficult to get rid of. It's like you can block cookies and third-party cookies from browsers, and you can like auto delete your cookies after sessions. But these super cookies are stored in a different way so that when you clear your browser history, these cookies don't actually they're not deleted because they're not they're not stored as a cookie. It's stored in another form and fashion. Mm-hmm. So you have to take a whole nother, way more convoluted path to delete these things. And it's just another way for these, like as we start to become more aware of the tactics and we start to learn how to, protect ourselves and guard ourselves against them, they have people engineering a new way to track and follow us, right? And the super cookie thing is just one example of that kind of speaks to your point. Like everything's going to continue to evolve. So there's no way we can just say, like if there are intentions out there to track us, which there are, people are going to evolve that technology, right? It has to be a paradigm shift for companies that just make the ethical decision that we're not going to sell this data. And like, that's kind of, I think the biggest point that we probably both share is that, this cat and mouse and like how much responsibility does an individual person have to be able to learn all the ins and outs of these technical things, learn how to protect themselves. It's an impossible ask. And Sure. We really just need companies to be more ethical in the way that they operate, I think.
Well, you talk about evolution there, and we're talking about this company in DuckDuckGo that people have been gravitating to. And I mentioned before that they have over 100 million searches a day on their browser. One of the things that I struggle to find is how many active users they felt that they could identify using the browser. That's something to take a peek at another time. But when we talk evolution, we're already starting to see certain articles coming out about the fact of that this lockdown, good for business company, good browser, following all the things that we talk about here at Privacy Matters, well, they're starting to dip their toe into that other water a little bit, right? And why do they do that? Sure. Because the juice is worth the squeeze, so to speak, right? The money is too great to pass up. And now that they have this large base, when they had thousands or hundreds of thousands of individuals on their browser, the data security, data privacy was a great storyline. Now that I assume that they're in the millions, right? Millions, tens of millions, maybe, they have a lot of money sitting on the table. And so maybe they're still going to have more data security, data privacy boundaries more than the other alternatives on the market. So they're still desirable to use. Yeah. But I would argue that at this point, we're starting to see them, like everybody else, recognize the value of what they have and dipping their toe into that water. And they're going to take advantage of what they've created and make some money off of it. And I know for me right now, if anybody's listening out there, I'm not changing my browser today. I'm still going to use DuckDuckGo despite this. But the reason for that is, to me, they're more secure than any other browser out there presently. But there'll be another DuckDuckGo. There'll be somebody that does this, that comes up with a new idea, a new browser that offers that privacy. And I think you and I were going to talk about one of those today.
Yeah, I mean, that's a perfect kind of segue into Brave browser, which is kind of a competitor of DuckDuckGo. In fact, they may use DuckDuckGo as their core search, their base search. I don't know. I have to look that up. I know that they're using, because obviously like all these browsers basically use, another search engine to help feed their browser. And then really the intricacy or the nuance between them is how they track and protect and block ads and those kinds of things. And then what's the algorithm that filters the data in and presents the information, right? So Brave, I think, was established kind of like through this crypto, we'll call it a crypto craze. I'm super into crypto, so I'm fully bought in on the craze, but no judgment there. Is, I guess,
for those at home, is this FTX thing I've been reading about? Is that what you're talking about? Crypto craze, the FTX down in Miami, Florida.
That's right. So I would say Brave came about, and Brave is tied to a coin, right? It's tied to a cryptocurrency, and that's a lot of the way how they generate revenue, But basically, it's a new model of not only asking permission to have your attention to ads, but then also paying you to participate with those ads. So you're paid in the Brave, in the currency that is associated with the Brave browser. And it's an attention token. And then you can use that attention token in a couple ways. One, you can use it to pay advertisers or content creators, and you can send them tips right from your balance, or you can just take that balance and add it to your own crypto wallet, and basically get paid for your attention there. It's not massive amounts of money that you're earning. It's very minute amounts that currently you're getting paid for attention, but it's a new model, right? It's a model that says we know that your time and your attention is valuable, and we're going to pay you for that time and attention. Some small rev share off of the money that we're making from advertisers to advertise on our platform. And again, it's not tied to your search history. It's just like the DuckDuckGo model, where it's a banner ad, it's a pop-up, it's a something, but you're allowing them to do it for one, right? You opt in, not
Sure.
opt out, which is important, right? That's a nuance that a lot of people don't get, is I'm opting into this and I'm saying I allow this, as opposed to having to go through all of your settings and then opt out of everything you don't want, right? And then the other thing is that, again, you feel like you're earning something for your time, which I think is important. And they also have
last week, right? We talked about that last week, about the fact of they're making all this money off of us, these groups, these platforms. Why don't we get some of the kickback? It sounds like you're talking, that's exactly what you're describing here. Even that kickback may not be a dollar bill in your wallet as much as part of this crypto market.
Yeah, exactly. And it is a dollar bill in your wallet, so to speak. And it's a way to kind of it basically experiment with a new business model, right? It's super encouraging to see that. And I think that's where the crypto has the Web3 kind of the crypto space has a huge opportunity, is to explore new ways for content creators. And honestly, we could think all of ourselves now at this point as content creators, because everything we do on the internet, everything we do on the web, we're creating data, right? And that is content that is used by companies. So we're all content creators, and we all deserve to get either an option for privacy and opt out of it, or we deserve to get some kind of revenue sharing from that. So
we talked a couple weeks ago about this, that a lot of people don't want to move to something different, not because it's something new, but because they have to, when you talk about the platforms and social media platforms that exist out there, now I have to rebuild my entire network. But today we're talking about web browsers. There's really nothing I have to do other than download a new app or pull up a different web page in my computer. So what is the inhibitor to this? Is it just awareness? It can't be comfort and easeability, because in using these other platforms, they're pretty easy.
I think you're right. I think it is just awareness, right? It's to what degree do you need that push to make a change, right? We talked about it at the start of this conversation. a lot of people are aware of the dangers of social media, but not many people are aware of what's going on with their web browser and how that data is being filtered and manipulated, right? I think if more people knew, and literally all they had to do was uninstall Google and install Brave, right? Like that's an easy switch. I think obviously all of these services, especially Google, they're super smart and adept at tying services together and leveraging, multiple logins and, providing point to point, like, synergies between products. So it's not just the browser. When you go to Google, you've got your docs, you've got your maps, you've got your email, you have all these other things that are kind of like tied in, which again, like paints a better picture of you, obviously, but at the same time, like people like that convenience, right? Of having all of those things kind of in one place and they kind of talk to each other. So if I save my tab here, then I can, add it to this thing over here. And, so, I mean, I think like some of these products that are newer have a little bit of a ways to go to, compete in those other areas that are more convenient. But you're right. I mean, when it comes to like strictly a browser, it's just as easy to delete something and upload, and I have both on my computer. I actually have Chrome and I have my Brave browser set up, because if I'm just doing all my general internet searching, almost 90% of the things I do in Brave, but I'll go to Chrome occasionally to see what the different results are, right? Like, and I'll do a side-by-side comparison and I'll see like, what am I actually looking at? Like, what am I being fed? And then, certain things I'll do over there and I'll get that kind of like background and the reminder of like, man, this is why this is such a huge thing, and I'd encourage everybody to run that experiment a couple times because it is fascinating.
So for the people at home, Brave costs how much to download and use and set up?
Yeah, completely free. Just like DuckDuckGo, both are completely free to download and start using.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And to this point, I know you've done more research than I have on this, but to this point, we're not really seeing anything on Brave being not following that data privacy, data security model.
Yeah, if anything, they even try to step it up a notch, right? So like, I think they're on par with what DuckDuckGo is doing, and that's what I've seen so far. It looks like blocking ads, blocking cookies, blocking tracking across sites, all the things that you'd expect from a browser that wants to protect your privacy.
Yeah, I guess one question I have is, we talked a little bit about DuckDuckGo starting to navigate into different waters and maybe taking advantage of some of the revenue that's out there and available to them. Why or why not would Brave not follow that same path? Why, as people start to migrate to Brave, why would they not delve into that? My question being, is there something with the cryptocurrency that is going to, the crypto model that they use rather, is there something there that is going to make it more beneficial for them to stay in line with, the current approach that they have?
Yeah, I don't know that. I think it makes it easier to have a revenue share model, right? Because everyone can tie in their wallet. You have your specific blockchain identity that you can, grab your currency from and add it to your wallet. So I think that's the benefit for them of using the blockchain, is that they have that revenue share already set up. But in terms of like browser safety, browser security, I think any browser, could make that choice to not track, to not do cross-site tracking, things like that.
Yeah, but they make that decision, they lose too much money, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Right.
I love it. I think when we touched on this just a little bit before, and I'll bring it up again because I think it's going to be one of the topics we talk about in the future here. But we're starting to see more being released on Twitter this week with regards to the information that they're pushing towards you, but also the information that they're suppressing from you. What do they not want to be the highlight? What do they not want you to read? And I certainly don't want our podcast to devolve into some type of political side one way or the other here, but it's pretty obvious what we're seeing there, and it's pretty obvious what we're getting in terms of information that may be changing in the future. Any thoughts on that?
No, so I think that honestly we could be apolitical and have an entire conversation about Twitter. I mean, that is a massive, there's so many interesting facets to the Twitter dilemma. And I think we're uncovering more and more now as Elon takes the helm, because, things are being exposed. But yeah, I think we'll have to probably table that for another conversation. But I do think that, we have, with regard to this browser stuff, I would say go ahead and try it, right? Like I just looked up, there's 3.5 million searches a day on Google. You quoted 100,000, I think, Steve, a day on DuckDuckGo. Let's get these numbers up, right? Like I think if we can get more people to do that side by side and see what they're getting back and see the benefits of maybe using some of these alternatives, the better, right? And the more privacy we're going to all have as a whole. And then I think, we can talk about, go ahead.
One note on that, Nick, it's actually 100 million searches, not 100,000 that they're saying on DuckDuckGo per day. So be interested to see that. Maybe I got that wrong, but from what I read, they're saying 100 million searches a day.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. And I was incorrect. It's 3.5 billion with a B on Google. So scale those numbers up that we just said. And we got 100 million on DuckDuckGo and 3.5 billion on Google, which makes more sense. But yeah, let's try to even those numbers out, right? Like I think if we get more people using some of these more secure tools, it's going to be better for all of us. And I think it's going to just again, spur the conversation, which is all we're trying to do, right? We're trying to have a conversation, make people more aware, and that's how people, us consumers and users of these tools, are going to be taken seriously, and how we're going to see some real sea change. So with that, I think we could probably wrap it here, Steve. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to download it. We hope all you will. The Brave app, we'll give that a shot. And then I think, Nick, we'll probably put that in the notes to the video here that we publish.
That's right. Yeah, we'll include links to the Brave browser and DuckDuckGo in the show notes below. And also links, as always, to some of the data sources that we use as we're discussing this stuff. One of the things that we want to always try to do is be very transparent, no BS, and use real information. So I think, that's where we're coming from, and that's what we kind of hold near and dear.
Yeah, I love it. I hope, appreciate the time today, Nick. Always fun to chat with you on these topics, and I hope everyone out there has a great holiday this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care, everybody.